Just a quick note before today's show. While we have transformed our entire platform to respond to the ongoing crisis, increasing our production of both podcast episodes and blogs, we cannot continue without your support. Please consider making a donation or contributing as a volunteer to support our active engagement at this critical time.
So I'm from a small ethnic minority group in Myanmar, that is known as Maramagyi. So the term double minority I meant was simply means minority within minority. So Myanmar is, ethnically a very diverse country. There are over 130, specifically speaking, there are 135 ethnic races in Myanmar, which are recognized by the 2008 constitution. Of course, that is a discriminatory list. There are more than that number. So Rakhine is an ethnic minority group in Myanmar, and Maramagyi is an even smaller group, even smaller than a Rohingya groups. So basically, a double minority means within minorities, minority within minorities. So for my background, I'm from that small minority group, and I worked as a ethnic rights activist. That's brief about me. I work on documenting human rights violations in the context of Rakhine and also Rohingya issues, and that's brief about me. Maybe I'm happy to answer if you want to know more.
Sure. Can you tell us a bit more about the Maramagyi people?
Okay, yeah. So Maramagyi there are over 10,000 population throughout the country, and they predominantly they practice Buddhism. The strange thing about these people is, even though they are a Buddhist group in Myanmar, their feature is they have like South Asian feature that is a bit distinct, distinct, and so. And for their feature and the way they speak and the linguistic characteristic and the way they speak is very much similar to that of Rohingya. But of course, there are some differences in these two languages. But basically, they are similar, and because of their feature and the way they speak, they are discriminated, not just by the government but also the community living in Rakhine, and also because of the religion they practice. They're on that basis, they're also discriminated by larger ethnic group in Myanmar, and because
So, for as far as religion goes, they're Buddhist, and the dominant religious group in Myanmar is also Buddhist. So, in what ways are Maramagyi Buddhists discriminated against by Bamar or Rakhine Buddhists?
okay, so what in Rakhine State there are two. Rakhine and Rohingya are two major, uh, ethnic group in
Hmm.
In Arkan area. So due to the our future and the way they speak, we're discriminated by Rakhine community, and on the basis of our religion, we're discriminated by Rohingya, and we experience some sort of violence as well during
Hmm.
2012. Ethnic conflict, and also in 2017 ethnic conflict as well.
I think there's another very small minority in that region as well, the Meru people. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, there are a few other ethnic minority groups: Mro, The, Khmer, Daina, and Khmer. As well, those are also minority groups. For Khmer, I think they experience even severe discriminate even more severe discrimination than us, because they practice Islam, and
Hmm.
and uh, because of their racial, it's difficult to say, and they're also a very small minority group, and they practice Islam. So on the
Hmm.
basis of that, even though they are in the list of recognized ethnic group, they are highly discriminated in Arkan.
So you described how you were discriminated against by Bamar Buddhists, Rakhine Buddhists, Rohingya. The being such a small minority group, you kind of get it from all sides. Can you give us some examples in your personal life, or maybe some anecdotes from your family or your friends or your community that can describe how this discrimination has manifested?
hmm So, well, I would say there are two kind of discrimination. One is institutionalized discrimination, and another is communal and discriminations. Uh, so, to start with the communal discriminations, and there are restrictions doing uh, some sort of like business as well. Let's say a Maramagyi farmer might have some farms, and Rakhine or other larger ethnic groups may people from those groups may get into your farms, and they can take whatever they want from your farms. You Even if you try to you know prohibit them from intruding to your place, but they won't care about you, and they might even bully you if you stop them. So we have those sort of social, uh, I would say it's more than just discrimination. It's even like violence, and uh, it, also during the conflict as well in 2012, Maramagyi houses in Maramagyi were burned down by Rakhine people, and also in 2017, and we face threat from Rohingya people as well in Mount Butidang area, and many people, a lot of Maramagyi people left their homes uh, in Moundo, and so we have those sort of we have some other social discrimination that I personally face as well. Even at school, I have been bullied by a lot of Rakhine friends, and even teacher, physically harassed me when I was at school. And in terms of institutionalized discrimination, even though my parents, they are citizen, they have national registration card, I don't have it, because I was denied from citizenships, and
Mhm.
and even in Maramagyi people, even though, well, in Myanmar, the difference is that in Myanmar, if you matriculated, the admittance to a university is determined by the score you get from your matriculation exams.
Mm-hmm.
So in for Maramagyi people, even though you get a good score at your matriculation exams, you want to go to you know to the institute, medicine university, or you want to become a doctor, you would be restricted. And if you want to study something that on which you can do your own professions, and there would be some sort of discrimination on that as well. You can't apply for engineering university, you can't apply for medicine university of medicines, and there are some sort of discrimination. And also we have travel restriction as well. Even within Rakhine State, if you want to travel from my village, Pamyang, to Sitwe, you need a lot of documents from the village village chairman. At the time, it was not administration office administrator, village administrator. They call it the time like village chairman. You need to ask for documentation from village chairman and also from the police stations. And you also need to bring your household document with you, and there are several other documents that you need just to travel to Sitwe from my village. And but if you want to travel out of the state, you will need even more documents, and you would only be allowed just for 45 days. So which is impossible to for you to for us to receive medical treatment, or also to do schooling at in Yangon. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, to get those kind of services is impossible for us. So we have those sort of institutionalized discriminations. And
Mm.
we have um, another thread that is I don't know how would you say that, whether it's a I don't know how to say that, whether it's a I'm not quite sure whether it's a institutionalized discrimination, or communal discrimination. It was in 2017. No, sorry, it was in 2012 when my father is a school teacher, and when he was in Myanmar town to withdraw his salary, he was at the Department of township educations. And when he was withdrawing his salary, he was surrounded by a lot of the so-called educated teachers to harm him, just to even to kill him, just to say directly. So my father tried to explain, no, I'm not a Muslim, I'm a Buddhist, I'm a Maramagyi, I'm an ethnic recognized ethnic from an recognized ethnic group. But they said Maramagyi are Kala, and they use the term Kala is
Mm-hmm.
a
Yeah.
discriminatory term. No, you are Kala, whatever, Maramagyi is also Kala, and you should not be here. And I think you can feel how a person would feel in that environment. All
Mm-hmm.
these hostile people are surrounded, just to around a person. And I it's my father, so I can imagine how he would feel. And the one lucky thing is that on that precise moment, the husband of a teacher who was working under my father came to the department, because he needs some documents from my father, just to transfer for his wife to transfer from my father's school to another place. So, and he was just shouting out my father's name is some is he's here or things like that. My father said, I'm here. So, and that guy saved my father from that
Mm-hmm.
place. I can imagine if he didn't turn up, I think my father would have been killed. So
Mm-hmm.
I think I don't know what sort of I don't know how would you say that, whether it's an because it's at the government building, and I don't know. It's I think it's like we have those kind of threat as well at the time. So yeah, and there are so many other social and institutionalized discriminations.
I mean, I think what's so incredible and fascinating and really devastating in hearing you talk is that, for one, you're painting this picture of this incredibly complex ethnic and religious diversity that exists within Myanmar. You're not even talking about the whole of Myanmar. You're just talking about one small little section, one little microcosm, and what's there. And I think the general picture, and justifiably so, is that the Rohingya have been this victim, and at the expense of this larger aggressor, which is heaped enormous suffering on their community, and that's very true. There's no uh, definitely there's nothing taking that main headline away. But as you break stories down, you're describing some of the interactions with your community that's a double minority, and even and far smaller in the Rohingya community, that you're actually facing certain kinds of prejudice and discrimination against the Rohingya, who are massively prejudiced and discriminated themselves. And so it just kind of brings about this extremely complex and challenging nuance to understand of that there's not this black and white or good and bad or aggressor and victim, but there are just all of these different ethnicities that are trying to live together and having their own tensions and having their own privileges and disadvantages that are occupying this same area and have these historic relationships as well as historic tensions they're working out. But it's just very, very complex. And you can't take away from this region the story that these are the guys that do this and these are the guys that are impacted this way. Yes, that might be true in a basic headline of understanding, but when you break things down, it's so much more complicated and nuanced in all of those different and diverse relationships. And I think, like all of us anywhere, not just Myanmar, but all of us anywhere, we are all creatures of privilege in some way, as we're also creatures of victimization in another. We go about the world by being objects of privilege and having our own privilege, while also being victimized in some ways by those who have more privilege than us. This is part of the human existence and human nature. But what you're describing in this part of Myanmar is just such a more complicated spin on this. And then on top of that, what the military is trying to do to propagandize and not trying to be a force for unity or solidarity, as many governments around the world do, but actually the opposite, actually trying to divide and to and to do fake news and propaganda and encourage hatred and enmity of different peoples. So you actually have the government playing certainly not a positive role, not even a neutral role, but actually an actively harmful role in trying to spread more dissent. I mean, this sounds like a very complicated and challenging situation growing up.
Yeah. So, well, what happened in Myanmar is we are experiencing ethnically a patriarchy in Myanmar, and the the the, the dominant ethnic oppress the smaller ethnic, and that smaller ethnic oppress even a smaller ethnic. It's very much like a patriarchy, and I think if everyone in Myanmar, all the ethnics expect the equal rights, and if they want to, if now people are fighting for federalisms, if they for the equal rights and equal autonomy, I think they all should come together and respect each other's right. And I think the communities in Myanmar need to be educated as well. And in the past, even you know, during the democratic times before the military coup, and the, there is no political representations, not just at the union level, also at the state level. There was no political representations for minorities and double minorities in Myanmar. So I think w- all the ethnics not just in Rakhine, all the ethnics throughout the country should come together and for their rights. And well, when we talk about the rights, ethnic rights, it also means the respect of rights to of other ethnics as well. So, and when we come together with respect of rights and also respect of justice, and I think the problem could be addressed to uh, address to an extent. And all we need for the moment is you know it's like law, is that need to be passed at the what the federal charter or whatever. We need specific law for the ethnics. I mean, especially minority groups in Myanmar, that because, well, let's say I want to demand for, I want to voice my ethnic rights at the parliament level, or at the union level. But since we cannot expect political representations, it's impossible. And even let's say, even if a constitution might provide a law that every all the ethnic can join the elections, and they can be, they have rights to be elected, or whatever law uh, is passed. I think it's impossible if you don't have enough population. There is if you don't have a constituency where there is enough populations of your ethnic groups to represent your ethnic at the parliament. So I think for the policymakers who are working on federal charters, and who are working on the constitutions of Myanmar, need some sort of policy for double minority groups, something like quota system or whatever. I think the there are two part. One is from the part of the policymakers, in terms of the minorities group, and another part is like the ethnic parts, like Rakhine and Rohingyas, because they all are also discriminated by the uh, majority groups and also by the government. And they need to realize that we are on the same boat, and we are on the same page, and we need to come together to fight this prejudice and to respect the rights of everyone. And in, yeah, and also not just ethnically, even individually, we need to respect the rights of everyone's, and we should demand for the justice of everyone in Myanmar.
Right. Well, I mean, this has been the story of Myanmar, right? Is the different ethnic groups trying to find a way to come together to have some coalition. And the scarred history of Myanmar has been really, sadly, tragically, the failure to do so. In some ways, it's been the presence of the communists. They've definitely splintered a number of ethnic groups before they dissolved in '88. In other ways, it's been the military itself and how much they've been able to splinter different groups through some of their policies and strategies and such. But you're outlining what has been the desire and the hope for so many generations and so many decades, that and even when you go back to the independence era and when England was going to leave their empire and grant independence, that was one of the requisites they called for, was that the Pinland Conference, that there would be that they would be able to see some kind of guarantee or evidence of some ethnic coalition that would come together. And sadly, the Pinland Conference was far from effective, as we've seen historically, and the Karen didn't even sign on to that. And it's just been one big mess of civil war ever since. But you're describing the hope and the goal and the ideal that has been in so many people's hearts in Myanmar for so long, and that we've yet to realize. And so where do you think we are now with that? What do you see as the current climate for how these different ethnic groups are able to see, as well as the majority groups as well, especially now, that they're able to see, in your words, that they're in the same boat? To what degree do you see progress on that front, and to what degree are you seeing challenges moving ahead?
Mhm. Well, even though we're experiencing a catastrophic situation, we're experiencing a very devastating situations. I think the perspective of the people, not just ethnic minority, but also the majority people, have changed. They come to realize that those people voice have long been silenced, and they started to realize that they are like on the same boats. And I think it's it's good in the bad. But even though the situation is horrible, the perspective of there is a great momentum in the perspective of the people for the federalisms, and for respecting the ethnic rights. And of course, ethnic group leaders are dealing with other like energy governments, and they are having those sort of political discussions on the federalisms, but there's still some shortcomings. There's still some policy need to be addressed, and but I think it's still a good sign. And before the military coup, people didn't even know what the federalism is. Our voice has long been silenced. Ethnic, not just our voice. All they thinks they might not think that they're privileged, but uh, the point is that they don't even realize that they're privileged. Actually, they are. And so one good thing is, even the perspective of Bamar people is now changing, and I think that's a good sign. And it's I think it's a good start. Because we had a lot of political discussions before the military coup, like NCA and blah blah blah, and nothing come into reality. It was like all on the paper, not into the reality. And it has been like a decade just discussing over the federalisms, and people, the ethnic revolutionary groups have long been fighting over. They've been fighting over 7 decades now for the federalisms. And the Bama people now started to understand how they're initially they didn't even give any attention on this ethnic issue. Now they're trying to see the pictures of how ethnic rights have been violated. I think it's a good sign now, and we can I only see progress in the future, and I have a strong hope, in taking down these military regimes and start a new federal democratic, chapters in very near future.
It's quite something to hear you say that in one of the darkest and to many the most hopeless moments of despair that the country has known in some time, in terms of the stalemate that's going on with the military coup and the military control, the atrocities and human rights violations and airstrikes that are happening every day, to say nothing of the rape, torture, and arrests and discrimination of ethnic minority communities, that within this climate, you're actually more hopeful than you were during previous years and decades, including the transition when things actually opened up, because of the fact that the Bamar majority wasn't really and by Bamar majority, I don't mean those that are in control, the military or even the NLD, but talking more the majority Bamar population, that you're feeling that they have moved from feeling a skepticism or suspicion of federal democracy and what that means. Of course, growing up in a climate where there's propaganda about these ethnic communities being terrorist organizations that their own military is protecting them from, that they're moving from this mindset to a mindset that federal democracy is actually the only thing that's going to keep them safe, that by ensuring the rights of others, that's a way that their rights are also going to be ensured. And I've talked to many Bamar Buddhists on this platform, on the record, that have said they've come to that conclusion directly. They've gone from feeling that they needed a state protecting Burmese Buddhism for them against these other ethnic minorities to feeling that the only way they can be safe is if these other people have their rights assured, their rights are also assured. But that's just something really quite curious to just reference and make note of, that in this darkest chapter of Myanmar's history is at a time when it sounds like you actually feel more hopeful about the prospects for a federal democracy of different ethnic minorities getting their rights assured than previous eras. Is that fair to say?
Yes, true. And because, well, people is fundamental in a country, and no matter how bad the regimes are, if the people are united, I think people will eventually win. That's I'm strongly convinced. And initially, yes, right. A majority of people are Bama in Myanmar, and they all thinks that like military is hero, military is protecting them. Military is protecting the country from disintegrations and things like that. They have those sort of mindsets. They think that federalism is disintegrations of the union. That's what they initially think. Uh, Initially that's what they thought. And now this perspective have changed. Federalism is the respecting the rights of ethnics. It's like giving the promises that they had in the past. It's as you mentioned, it's the Pinglong unions, it's the Pinglong agreement. So keeping the promise is not integrating, disintegrating the country. Uh, since the perspective of the people has changed, I think, of course, we are in the you know dark times. A lot of people have been killed. Many villages have been on fires, and a lot of uh, homes have been destroyed. Of course, and many lives were lost, and of course we're experiencing all this atrocious act every day. But since people of Myanmar are determined and they are on the right path, I am hopeful that we will win eventually, because we never had this sort of momentum in the past. Even to 1988 revolution is not comparable to this momentum. I think there is a huge momentum in these revolutions of the people against the military regimes, and I am convinced that we're on the right track and we're going to win this.
Let's talk a little about your own personal journey as well, because I just can't help but notice that you reference the discriminatory laws that are established in Myanmar are so rigid that a person from your ethnic group cannot leave that region for more than 45 days out of the year to go to other parts of Myanmar. That's just extraordinary. That's just awful. As you mentioned, university or travel or medical or family or whatever else, to have that kind of restriction is really just almost like being confined to a camp or something. And yet you have not just managed to leave your own region, but you've managed to leave the country. You're pursuing a career of wanting to support human rights and documentation in Myanmar, so that you're advocating not just for yourself or your own group, but for the country and communities as a whole. given the lack of opportunities and the discriminatory nature of the laws that affect you and your community, your journey to where you've gotten to and what you're doing seem quite extraordinary to me. So can you share what exactly you're doing now and what brought you there?
Okay. So, well, yes, when uh, I matriculated in 2008, let me start from that. And I was in Sutway to pursue my higher educations at Sutway University. And still then, I didn't have any national registration card. And I managed to get my national registration card in 2010. It's a bit earlier than movement project, and it's not like I got it officially. I got it by bribing the immigration officer because I needed it to pursue my master degree, to travel to Yangon, and we all needed that. So, and there was a tendency in Maramagyi that they, once they need to get NRC card, they need to bribe the immigration officer. And in 2011, there was a, I think it was, sorry, it's not in 2011. It was after 2012, after the conflict happened in Rakhine, racial conflict happened in Rakhine. And there was a movement project, and that project, one of the project, one of the movement projects, provided Maramagyi people with national registration card. But I get my national registration card a little bit earlier. And despite that, you have national registration card. If you travel to Yangon, you need extra document from the village administrator and also from the police stations. And uh, I needed that when I came to Yangon to pursue my master degree. And even if the point is, even if you are you didn't need that extra document, once they know that you are Maramaji, they will uh, you know uh, take you out of the car, and they will start investigating. They will make you recite Buddhist prayers. It means that Maramaji people should not practice any religion other than Buddhism. So you need to recite Buddhist prayers at the immigration checkpoints. And I had those sort of uh, uh, those sort of restrictions when I was at my when I was studying my educations. And still then I didn't work for my communities. And in 2007, I graduated in 2015. And then still the voice of Maramaji people and other ethnic groups in Rakhine have not been heard by many people. And 2017 crisis happened, and my activism started since then. So in 2018 and 2019, 2020, you know, all these times I've been collaborating with UN Human Rights Office, documenting human rights violations in Rakhine State when the conflict between Arkan army and military broke out. I was documenting crimes against humanity in with OACHR in Rakhine State, and also occasionally documenting the plight of Rohingya people. And I've been doing all this activism work, and I've been also somehow collaborating with Arkansas unions and doing uh, all those things. And after the military coup, we were like the first group that came out to street. Well, on the same day, there was a big protest led by Ethan Zamong, who is the minister of NUG now. And there was a big protest, but we are a little bit earlier than their protest. I think we came out to street around 10 a.m. in the morning, and it was at Ninigong junctions. And but we received only limited attentions from the media, because our group is very very small. And so since then we're like the first group that came out to street in Yangon. I've been protesting. I've been publicly delivering speeches in Sule, and doing all these things. And the issue, the SEC issue warrants against me. I've been several safe houses running here and there. So thanks to the pleas and suggestions of my friends and my friends from OACHR, I left the country in April. And yeah, even before the military coup, there were it was under military NLD government tenure. There were some SB, but always following me. SB are like police from special branch. They normally followed me. Uh, though there were no charges against me, I think they have some sort of suspicions on what, because I've been collaborating with Arkan student unions, and I've been also uh, dealing with the victims in Arkan state who have been affected by the human rights violations. So they know what I have been doing, but there was no charges against me. But SB police were all, they would be always mostly in civilian dress. They would be like following me. It was before the military coup. So yeah, I left the country in April, and that's how I came here.
Mm, right. Yeah. So tell us a bit about some of the work that you've been doing as part of these student unions and General Strike Committee that have been very active and playing this important role. Tell us a bit more about what all these groups are doing right now, 2.5 years into the coup.
Okay, so I think the student group, after the military coup, I've not been dealing with the student group. After the military coup, there were, we just happened to you know come up together. I mean, we here means there, ethnic leaders from like Kachin and Kayin. Like, we happened to come together, and we decided that we should go even more systematic, and we need, a unified voice from all the ethnic groups. And we, you know founded the General Strike Committee of Nationalities. And we have uh, some at the same day we adopted some uh, policy. It's like our goals. It's like, one is to eradicate military dictatorship. When we say dictatorship, it's any forms of dictatorship, not just by military dictatorships, because we even experienced some sort of democratic dictatorships before the military coup. And so when we say that's why we didn't use the term military before the dictatorship. We say eradicating any sort of dictatorships in Myanmar. And also, establishing federal democracy. And we have those sort of policy adopted. On the same day, our committee was founded after the coup. And then we had a series of a protest against the military regimes. And the most of the and people who have been protesting along our ethnic our committee, they have some sort of some sort of like signs that represent their ethnic group, something like wearing their traditional clothes, or probably carrying their na- national flags, or things like that. So, and of course our committee was very diverse, and people started to, I think it's some sort of like making people realize that Myanmar, like especially Bamar people, that Myanmar is extremely diverse country, and our rights have long been, you know, violated. And it's something like educating people in somehow as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. And as far as the your own ethnic group and the activities that you've been doing. Can you talk about how your ethnic community has been faring since the military coup? What difficulties have they faced, and is there any resistance force or armed group associated with your people?
Well, actually, no, because Myanmar, Maramagyi people have been. It's they have this strong inferiority in their mind. They think that standing up against any ruling group is is very much like crime, because they have seen those sort of atrocities, for many decades. And so far, I think I'm the only person who have been doing this activism work, sometimes criticizing Rakhine community for and sometimes criticizing Rohingya groups, sometimes criticizing the military groups. I think I'm the only person in my community. Most of Maramagyi people they are uneducated. Another thing is their inferiority is very, very strong, and I think it will take time to heal their inferiority. So far we don't have any resistant group, and they are very afraid of founding that sort of group as well.
Right. So, in looking at the Miramachi people, this is a Buddhist group, a Buddhist ethnic group in this part of the world that also spills over into Bangladesh. And of course, before there were formal borders,
Hmm.
people lived in uh, in many cases all over Southeast Asia. There
Yeah.
were communities that lived across lands before borders came, and then borders split up the different groups of people according to the new national identities. And there is a longstanding Buddhist community in Bangladesh. But I understand that the Barua people are connected ethnically with the Maramagyi, and there are some very notable Barua Buddhists in historically that have played important roles. I mentioned this to you before the interview. One being Deepa Ma,
Hmm.
who studied under Mahasi Sayadaw and was a teacher of Joseph Goldstein, and the other Munindra, who was associated with all of the great teachers and students and future meditation teachers of the day, and also studied under Sayadaw U and Mahasi Sayadaw in Burma, and then spent some time in India and Bodh Gaya. These are very notable names that any meditator listening will know that were members of this Bangladeshi Buddhist community. And so, can you talk about your own people, the Maramagyi? What relations or connections or other kind of familiarity do you have with some of the Buddhist community in Bangladesh? Do you see yourselves as kind of distant cousins and part of a similar group, or is it closer than that, or is it really quite more distant that with the borders setting in that these communities have somewhat separated and you don't have as much contact?
Hmm. Um, yes. Well, according to Rakhine historians and some Bamar historian as well, our derivation is from uh, India regions. Since the Buddha's time, they wrote that we derived from this region. At the time, Bangladesh was part of India.
Mhm.
So after the Buddha's time, people like Buddhist group in that area, they experience a lot of challenges, a lot of threat as well, from many other religious group. And also we had those sort of Mago Empire as well. Due to those sort of threat, we left, you know we left the India regions, and we came close to Arkan Kingdom. It was like on the border of Arkan and India, and of course, there are majority of Brua people live there, and some like somewhere on the side of Arkan. So yes, we are ethnically related. We're like the same ethnic group, but majority of Burwa lived in Bangladesh, in Chittagong area, and we are just very small populations were on the side of Arkan kingdoms since then. And so since the populations and on the side of Bangladesh is very very big, and there are a lot of both religiously or other either politically and some other social. There are some public figure in Bangladesh as well. Dipama, I happened to read her as well. Some even claim that she was even like arahat. She
Yeah.
has
Yeah.
high spiritual enlightenment uh,
Hmm.
as well. So well, it's it, well, it's something to be proud that
Yeah.
there is someone like that in our ethnic groups. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Those are very well known and respected names. And so, does your community these days have much to do with that Buddhist community around Chittagong, or have national borders and time just kind of naturally started to separate those apart?
Yep. Yeah. People still thinks that they're the same race. Maramagyi and Burwa are the same. So some, but when we say Maramagyi language, we identify ourselves as Burwa. When we communicate with other people in Myanmar, because we need to speak a different language, either Rakhine or Burma. Rakhine and Burma are linguistically very similar. So
Hmm.
we use the term Maramagyi. So Maramagyi is also the name listed in 2000. Sorry, the name listed in the constitutions of Myanmar. So we identify as Maramagyi as well, and basically Maramagyi and Burwa are the same. And some Burwa people in Bangladesh as well, they themselves identify as Maramagyi, but not many.
Right. And in terms of Buddhism, in what way does Maramaji Buddhism differ from Bamar Buddhism, which is the majority in the country?
Mhm. Uh, Actually, we all practice Theravada Buddhisms. Even in Bangladesh, Burwa people they practice Theravada. But historically, there were some evidence that Burwa people practice Mahayana Buddhisms. But I assume that Mahayana Buddhism came into Burwa community only after you know only after some time later, when there was ideologically religious ideologically clash between Mahayana and Theravada Buddhisms,
Hmm.
and after probably Mughal Empire, uh, there were like competition among these two Buddhist branches, especially on the India regions. So
Hmm.
I think since then at the times Burwa people practiced Mahayana Buddhism for a certain time, and but I think now even in Bangladesh they're practicing Theravada Buddhisms. Of course, even
Right.
in
Yeah.
Theravada, when we say even in Theravada Buddhism, even in Myanmar, there are still, you know, there is there are still some ideas of Mahayana mixed into
Sure.
Theravada Buddhisms.
Yeah.
Once you go to a pagoda, Buddhist pagoda in Myanmar, you would see some creatures, surrounded by the pagoda, like
Hmm.
Sunday corner, Saturday corner, like there would be some sort of those creatures. It's like these are not from Theravada, these are from Mahayana as well, and there are a lot of those Mahayana ideas, mixed into Theravada Buddhisms. And now I think some educated monks in Myanmar are, uh, educating on this Mahayana, trying to, refining Buddhisms, Theravada Buddhism.
Sure. Yeah. And that's true across all of Southeast Asia, even among the Bamar empires. There's evidence of various Hindu as well as Mahayana, and then of course the whole animist realm coming into the Buddhism practiced by the Bamar as well historically. And there were advisors to the king over the years as well that came from those different backgrounds. But in terms of, I understand that today both sets of people practice Theravada Buddhism, but is the expression or the way that the faith manifests, is it are there differences contemporarily in among the Maramagyi people as in Bamar Buddhists?
Um, well, still, I think they are too attached to some ideas that are inherited from Mahayana, and it's difficult to convince them is Mahayana Buddhism. Even the Tripitaka, there is, let's say you go to someone and say that it's not from Tripitaka of Theravada Buddhism, is from Mahayana, they would
Hmm.
not easily accept that, uh,
Hmm.
because they're too attached sometimes. And but when you ask them what religion do you practice, he would identify that is Theravada. And I think in Bangladesh is the same. They would say they are practicing Theravada Buddhism. Still, yeah, they're like some sort of mixture of other ideas as well.
Right. So, yeah, as we close our interview, I realize that we've been talking quite a bit about more of the political aims of the Maramaji people, as well as just the overall federal democracy in Myanmar and different ethnic minorities, a very serious and important topic. But I also want to make some space for understanding other parts of the Maramaji people as another people on this earth, and just the curiosity our listeners probably have about different aspects of their culture and society, given such a small ethnic minority. And as you said yourself, you count yourself as perhaps maybe the only Maramaji person that has transcended from the community and has gone internationally to be able to connect with not just other people in Myanmar, but around the world. And so you've become something of a representative. So if we could just learn a bit more about the people and the culture, let's start with food. If you can just tell us something about that would be interesting to our listeners. What if one were to go into a Maramaji home, what kinds of special and unique foods could they find there?
Well, there are some sort of snacks that they do,
Mm,
and I would say, well, they have, there. Just to mention one snack, it's like, well, we have like paddy, right? When
mhm,
paddy started to sprout, the the grain in that paddy is so sweet. So they collect all these grains from the rice, and make snacks. It's very much like um, loza in Rakhine. Rakhine have some sort of like loza, but it's
mhm,
similar to that, but it's different. So they have those kind of food as well, and they have many other snacks as well. So in terms of the in terms of the curry, I think there are some distinct curries as well, from Rakhine. They have uh, well, it's difficult to describe. They have like um s- some sort of when when monsoon season starts, the fish normally, there are some sort of tiny fish, that are easily found in the fields. So they have different recipe to cooking those sort of food as well. So they call that in Maramagyi they call that guramas as well. So they have those kind of food as well. And husuak is very famous, and gondo. So those curries are very famous in Maramagyi. I still miss those food. It's been quite a long time that I haven't tried. I haven't eaten those food. So
mm,
yeah, those are very
mhm.
distinct from other ethnic groups in yeah, Rakhine.
That's great to know. That's great to hear that. Is there anything else that stands out among Marmaji people or culture or custom that you'd like to take the chance to share and educate us on now?
Yes. Well, I think it's pretty. pretty much. Well, there we have distinctive culture, as but it's my bad that I just don't come up
Mhm.
with, and we have when I was young, I have seen my grandma smoking. What the way she smoke is very much is different. There is very much like a small pot, and there's a pipe connected to this pot, and she just smoke with this pipe. And I don't know what ingredients she put in those pot as well. But this
Mhm.
culture has already been gone. I know that we need to preserve those sort of a culture. At least we need to have the record of those port as well. And we have some other customs and traditions that Maramagyi people do, but sadly we are losing that because the point is that even young generation today, they thinks that as doing those sort of practice, exercising those sort of culture is shameful because they are different from other majority groups. And even
Mm.
today, most Miramaji people are not speaking Miramaji language as well. And
Uh-huh.
actually, yeah, I myself is not good at speaking Miramaji language. I understand. So we are losing our culture, and I know we need to preserve. And but recent we founded Miramaji Culture and Literature Committee. But since I needed to leave the country, I could not work on that anymore. But I'm still need to figure out on how I could w- work on preserving their culture and literature.
Yeah, yeah, that's very interesting. And you mentioned literature. I seem to remember that Chittagong, the Buddhists from Chittagong, historically have are just very famous for their literature, their poetry, their scholarship, going back to the British period when the British Empire was there. So it would make sense that there would also be an appreciation for literature and such among the Maramaji people as well.
Mhm. Yeah, well, in terms of the literature and well, before this Bangladesh region was predominantly Buddhist people, and
Hmm.
they have those sort of literature. So, but after all these things, including Mughal Empire, and after all these things happened, the only limited number of Buddhist people remained in that area. So some people some people are inclined to claim that their literature is like what Bangladesh Deshi people are using, the literature. They're like the same literature, but uh, but it's not okay. I don't think it's something appropriate to claim, like that. So we just need to invent another literature, since we speak,
Hmm.
Indo-Aryan language. I think our creations of a new uh, alphabets, a new should alphabet should be connected to somehow connected to Bangladeshi alphabets as well.
And so you're saying that there's an issue with trying to figure out the most appropriate written script for Maramaji language. Is that correct?
True, true. Yeah, even though we have I don't think the way we speak is similar, but the both Burua people may want to uh, claim that the lit these written scripts that the alphabets that people are using in Bangladesh, or that they're related to those scripts. And but it's not, but there might be clashes if they claim like that. So what we think is we need to invent a new written scripts and new alphabets for our people, for our language, in order to prevent our language from you know uh, disappearing, because
Yeah.
we're otherwise in long run we will lose our language as well.
Yeah, I mean, you're really painting kind of a sad picture of of life experience in this small minority community, which I'm sure is true for many other small minority communities within Myanmar as well. You don't have equal rights. You have systematic and institutional prejudice and racism that you're confronted with. You're constantly afraid of being overwhelmed, not just by the main majority, but even by groups that are themselves being victimized by the majority, but then are bigger and more influential than your group, and so they're following that same practice of kind of kicking down the ones who are below them. And then you're also talking about being overwhelmed in terms of a culture, in terms of a language, in terms of an identity and equal rights and everything else. And so you're really painting this picture of a people that are trying to survive with access to basic human rights while also trying to maintain their own identity and their own customs, things like language and food and literature and identity. These are no small things, and so this is really quite a challenge.
True. Right. Yeah, definitely.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I thank you so much for taking the time to educate us on your own life and your own views and experiences and what you're doing now in the post-coup era to try to bring these different ethnic groups together and reach out to Bamar as well as educating us on the Maramagyi people. I'm just really honored that our platform is able to serve in bringing out this information about this ethnic minority to our listeners who are tuning in and learning something and getting a bit of something about this small ethnic group and having a window into their experiences and their aspirations and their work right now. I think that's just fantastic.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, and I'm also thank you for having me, and for providing me a chance to share my experience and my the background of my ethnic.
I know for a lot of podcast listeners, as soon as the fundraising requests start up, you just kind of zone out or skip ahead till it's over. But I ask that if you're taking the time to listen to our full podcast, that you also take the time to consider our spiel. Some may assume that producing a 2-hour episode wouldn't take much more than the conversation itself. But so much more goes into it. In advance of the interview, our content team reviews the biography and relevant works of the upcoming guests, and we discuss the best way to use our limited time together. After the interview is completed, the raw audio file is sent to our sound engineer who shapes it into working order. A single episode can take several full days of solid production work in the studio, which is carefully coordinated with our content team to ensure smooth listening. Further edits and post-production magic bring the eventual episode into your ears, along with extensive written descriptions of each interview, which we publish on our blog and social media. Many of these steps require an outlay of funds in some way or another. We hope that each episode informs you about the ongoing crisis, and if you find it of value, we also hope that you might consider supporting our mission. If you would like to join in our mission to support those in Myanmar who are being impacted by the military coup, we welcome your contribution in any form, currency, or transfer method. Your donation will go on to support a wide range of humanitarian and media missions, aiding those local communities who need it most. Donations are directed to such causes as the Civil Disobedience Movement, CDM, families of deceased victims, internally displaced person IDP camps, food for impoverished communities, military defection campaigns, undercover journalists, refugee camps, monasteries and nunneries, education initiatives, the purchasing of protective equipment and medical supplies, COVID relief, and more. We also make sure that our donation fund supports a diverse range of religious and ethnic groups across the country. We invite you to visit our website to learn more about past projects, as well as upcoming needs. You can give a general donation or earmark your contribution to a specific activity or project you would like to support, perhaps even something you heard about in this very episode. All of this humanitarian work is carried out by our nonprofit mission, Better Burma. any donation you give on our Insight Myanmar website is directed towards this fund. Alternatively, you can also visit the Better Burma website, betterburma.org, and donate directly there. In either case, your donation goes to the same cause, and both websites accept credit card. You can also give via PayPal by going to paypal.me/betterburma. Additionally, we can take donations through Patreon, Venmo, GoFundMe, and Cash App. Simply search Better Burma on each platform and you'll find our account. You can also visit either website for specific links to these respective accounts or email us at info@betterburma.org. That's Better Burma, one word, spelled BETTERBURMA.org. If you would like to give it another way, please contact us. We also invite you to check out our range of handicrafts that are sourced from vulnerable artisan communities across Myanmar, available at alokacrafts.com. Any purchase will not only support these artisan communities, but also our nonprofit's wider mission. That's Aloka Crafts, spelled ALOKACRAFTS, one word, alokacrafts.com. Thank you so much for your kind consideration and support.